Hi you guys, welcome back to Pink Chair Therapy. So today we have a really awesome episode, but it is going to look a little bit different than in the past. Today I'm going to introduce you to a story from one of my clients rather than the client themselves. When my dad and I recorded this episode, we didn't realize that we were going to have to keep it anonymous just because of the sensitivity of the story that was shared and because other people were involved in that story. So we do have to keep it anonymous. But instead of re-recording the whole episode, we just went through and bleeped out and removed any identifying information. Before I go much farther, I really want to say thank you to this client in particular. You know who you are. You have always been an inspiration, and you're strong, you're resilient, and I know it's so hard to be vulnerable, especially when you know that your actions have hurt or affected someone that you love. So thank you again for letting us use just part of your story to help other people open up a vulnerable part inside themselves that they probably wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So thank you. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about our visual memory as humans, which starts developing around 3 to 5-ish, versus our emotional memories, which starts developing much younger and affects how we process everything in our lives without us really even knowing it. This particular topic came up because my client and I, during our appointment, had discussed a really difficult time in their lives when they actually had to give up raising their child at 2 years old. And when my dad heard that part of our conversation, he really wanted to dig deeper into this concept that this particular child will probably never remember the actual trauma of being separated from a parent at 2 years old. But even at that young of an age, our brains are processing emotions and holding on to these emotional response memories. And those underlying memories will affect us throughout our lives, our relationships, our decisions, our anxiety responses that we're not even in control of. All of those things. And we might not ever actually be able to pinpoint why we react to certain things the way that we do. But a lot of the time we can tie those things back to something that happened to or around us between the ages of 1 to 3. When our brains aren't really holding on to visual memories yet, but they're significantly being shaped by our emotions and our visceral reactions that are pumping through our brains at that age. I know I've said way too much already, but I'm really excited for you guys to be able to listen to my dad dive a little deeper into this topic that literally affects every single one of us. I really, truly believe this will be super helpful to most, if not all of us. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode of Pink Chair Therapy.
Hi!
My name is Rebecca Hillard.
And I'm Roger Hillerstrom.
And this is Pink Chair Therapy.
Rugged though it be.
Hi you guys, welcome back to Pink Chair Therapy. If you have not been with us before, my name is Rebecca. This is my dad, Roger.
Hi there.
So today I'm going to introduce you to one of my clients and dear friends. I did her hair a few months ago and we were able to film that appointment. So I know that you obviously watched this video. I'm super curious about where we're going to go, but what exactly were you, what did you get from this?
Okay, yeah, I love watching your interaction with your clients, first off. And yes, so interesting. You just know lots of very interesting people.
That's true.
It's just great, yeah. But so I was very interested in a story about her son, all right? So I have some questions for you because you know the history and you kind of know that story.
Right. Yeah, I do.
Tell me a little bit. So he was born into a relationship, into a marriage where the father was not his biological dad, right?
Right.
And so how old was he when they divorced?
I think he was about 2.
Okay.
He was young.
He's very little,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Right. And since that time, has he had any contact with his stepdad?
Stepdad, no.
Okay. And how old was he when Grandma and Grandpa stepped in and parented him?
It was very soon after the divorce, so he was young.
Yeah. But so there was a period of time between the time they divorced and the time Grandma and Grandpa took over, right? And if I remember right, I think they all have together decided, let's keep this going, even though is now married, has a family, etc. They've decided that because of the transition in his age, it's probably best that for consistency he stays with Grandma and Grandpa.
Right, because because Grandma and Grandpa have been raising him essentially since he can remember.
Yes,
right? So he's very that's all he's ever known.
Yep.
So for them, they decided was in a stable place with her life and her family.
Right.
Then it was still like why put him through this trauma of transition as a young kid, when he's already kind of in a stable place. So they just decided he will continue being raised by his grandparents.
Right. And they're loving. It's a warm, loving, nurturing family, etc. Okay. Dozens of principles here that are great to talk about. That's what I'm thinking. So, because I'm thinking, all right, so what do we imagine about this boy? All right, because he's been through a lot. And doesn't even know it, other than they probably tell him stories, etc. Right. So, a couple of principles to keep in mind here that I'm thinking are a part of all of our lives. We typically don't pay attention to it. All of us have two sets of memories, okay? Okay. When I say, tell me what you remember about XYZ, what you do is you go into your file cabinet in your brain and you come up with pictures and videos and things that you call memories. Okay, yes, I remember Uncle Herman. He looked like such and such, or I remember this event, it happened like this. Okay. And so we have this visual memory. That's usually what we talk about when we're saying, I remember. Pictures. All right? Yes, pictures in our minds. Now, we have another memory, another set of memories that are emotional. They have to do with feelings, something that I experienced internally. And typically, we will see that the memory of pictures and the memory of emotions, that they link together. Right. So you and I were talking a little while ago about, burning your Christmas tree in the fireplace, and it smells like a campfire.
I'm burning my Christmas tree in the fireplace, sue me.
A little at a time. It's not this big place. No ashes on the ceiling or anything like that. But it generates a smell of a campfire. Right. And I know you and I share this experience of, when I smell a campfire, I get these good feelings inside because campfires are associated with lots of good memories. Good memories. For us. Exactly. Yeah. And that's where we say, okay, I can be walking down the street and smell someone burning a Christmas tree and have these warm feelings. But because I have this visual memory, I know why I have these feelings because, I just remembered this camping trip or that backpack trip or whatever.
I have pictures associated with it.
Exactly. Right. And so we say, I have this memory. Now, most of us are well aware of what you and I are talking about. Right. Now, those aren't necessarily always linked. Okay. There are times where I have emotional memories, but I have no visual picture of them.
When do they start?
That's a good question. Most folks, our visual memory starts somewhere around age 3, So when I ask people, okay, tell me your first memory, typically it'll be a story somewhere, 3 to 5, Now, if there's been trauma, a lot of times there's blocked memories. And so because the feelings are so bad, I didn't want to feel them. And so, I, not necessarily consciously, but I just blocked those memories. Sometimes I had really strong feelings about something before age 3 to 5, and I have these emotions, but I don't have a recall of them. Right. It's just an interesting concept that, I can have experiences that I don't have an image for, a visual memory, but I do have an emotion about it. And I'm thinking, so if we talk about her little boy, I'm thinking it's very likely that he will have emotional memories that have to do with stability and predictability and authority figures and nurturant, parental figures that will be confusing or they'll be unsettling.
But it's just going to be a feeling. He's not going to have pictures associated with, this is why I feel this way, this person and this experience, whatever, but it's just going to kind of come to fruition in a feeling.
Yes.
Interesting.
I would just say it's very likely. Yeah. So when all this happened before age 2, it imprinted on him emotionally. It's very likely it imprinted in him. Yeah. But he doesn't necessarily have a visual memory. And so I'm thinking for him, it probably won't be troubling. Who knows? But, chances are This type of stuff tends to surface in late adolescence or midlife or whatever,
Right.
where, well, I have this feeling and it doesn't make sense to it. I got a great story for you.
Okay.
All right? This is just a good example of it. The gal I saw many, many years ago, who came to me for diagnosis with generalized anxiety disorder. She had anxiety, and she would just describe herself as, I'm just anxious, but tired of it. And one of the things that she described was an anxiety surrounding Christmas. And it was just interesting. It was an interesting story. So she was probably midlife, 35 to 45, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But she had always dreaded Christmas, the Christmas holidays. But her Christmases were all wonderful. Growing up, they were all wonderful. As an adult, they were wonderful. All she knew is, I just don't like Christmas. It doesn't, I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
We pursued it a little bit, and we talked a little bit about, things that had happened around Christmas. Nothing merited what she was describing.
Like nothing was negative.
Yeah, nothing.
Christmas
no
was
big
happy.
deal. Sometimes you're a kid and you didn't get the present you wanted, but certainly didn't merit that kind of reaction.
Anxiety.
Right. Now, I don't remember exactly what it was, but during the time we were getting together, she had some conversations that were kind of random, but she started connecting some dots. And the conversations were about were with extended family members, I think an aunt, a cousin,
Yeah.
And as they were talking, something occurred to her. One of the things that came up that had never been discussed in her family growing up was she had a grandfather who was an alcoholic, and he was a violent rager, all right? But he lived in another state.
Oof.
She had no memory. He died when she was like 3, 4, or whatever. She was very young, never experienced him, no memories of him. And the family didn't talk about him. So this was not something that was discussed, all right? Now here she is talking to these family members, and they're saying, Grandpa, I remember Grandpa. And the things that came up was he only came from out of state to visit the family once a year. Guess when? Right, at Christmas time. And everybody, all the grown-ups, walked on eggshells around Grandpa, especially when he started drinking. Because when he drank, he would get angry.
Right.
And not unusual for him to be violent, And so what they knew is, we got this little girl, we watch Grandpa carefully, and when he starts to drink, as soon as that tension comes up, we take her shopping. We hustle her out of this room so that, we can manage Grandpa.
Wow.
And everybody who talked to her at this time said, yeah, we always did that. You were never there. You were never there.
So she never actually witnessed his rage.
Never witnessed the rage. Had no memory of Grandpa. But there's a great example of, what she knew.
Constant tension around Christmas. Like nobody is enjoying this.
That's right.
Wow.
This little kid knew what it felt like, but had no visual memory to it. All she knew was, there is danger at Christmas.
Right.
There is stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but she reads the grown-ups,
Oh my gosh, that gives me goosebumps. Oh my gosh, that gives me goosebumps thinking of that is such a subtle thing. As a kid, she didn't even experience trauma, but just that generalized tension that so deeply affected her that in her adult life she's dealing with this generalized anxiety around Christmas. What?
And doesn't have a clue as to why. It was because nobody talked about it.
Because it wasn't a memory. It wasn't a picture in her head. It wasn't like this I don't like Christmas because my alcoholic grandpa came in every year and it was super traumatizing.
Right.
There's nothing there.
Right. But she lived in this mellow, calm family. Everybody around her was loving and nurturing. That's why they hustled her out of there.
Right.
But with the one time things were really scary with no explanation was at Christmas time. Right. So anyway, that's just a great example of what we're impacted with in our emotional memory has to do with things like safety and stability and predictability, etc.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, this little boy, he is well loved, he's well cared for, everybody is attentive to him.
Yeah.
But they're almost guaranteed there are going to be emotional memories of people come and go. And I don't know why, because people don't come and go in his life now,
Yeah.
Now, all of us have things like that. We do.
Oh, for sure.
It isn't necessarily trauma, But our emotional memory, I mean, my gosh, there are studies that are, whatever you want to make at them, where they can, I don't know how accurate they are or whatever, they trace emotional memories to in utero, that there are indicators that we may have memories of things that happened outside the womb while we were inside the womb. I don't know, not my area, but it is amazing that we do imprint.
Yeah.
And so then I think a principle to remember is there are times where we will have an emotion reaction that doesn't make sense to us.
Right.
And so, well, why do I feel it doesn't make sense? Then I begin to feel a little crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe I'm schizophrenic. Oh, maybe I'm bipolar. Maybe I'm some or other. When wait, before we go there, it's often, I think it's probably way more common than most of us really are aware of, is that, I don't remember it, but I'm not crazy. This emotion came from somewhere.
Right.
It's just not current.
It's not a picture in my head, but there's a reason it's there.
Yes.
That's so interesting, because I feel like so many people, like now, don't they say like now more people than ever, like more millennials than ever, like have anxiety, like experience anxiety, right?
Right.
Like maybe not more than ever. I think we're just talking about it more.
Maybe.
But it's really interesting, because I feel like everybody at some point or another, everybody is too generalized, but most people at some point or another, it will experience some kind of feeling that doesn't really click into the situation. It doesn't really make sense. You feel this anxiety, or you feel this unrest, or you feel this like uncomfortability when maybe you shouldn't.
Right.
Like it doesn't really fit the context, and realizing like, oh no, okay, this isn't out of nowhere. I am not crazy. There's a reason this is here. Whether I find out what it is or not, okay, but recognizing that like there may be an emotional memory in me from something I don't remember, whether it was between ages 1 and 3 or another time in my life that I just don't remember it, but my body remembers it, like my soul remembers it, right? And it's experiencing it in this moment, and that's okay. Like I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy. Yeah. And I'm thinking, so a discussion like this, people that are our audience listening to this, understanding this principle doesn't necessarily resolve anything, but can give a context of maybe lowering the anxiety. If I feel this anxiety and I think I'm crazy, now I'm increasing my anxiety rather than, okay, something is here. Whether I ever find out about it or not, who knows? But it's just, now there's lots of reasons for anxieties. In future episodes, we'll spend some more time on anxiety.
Oh, we will go into anxiety.
Yeah, right. There's a wealth there. But couple of thoughts. So we're talking about one principle, and that's this, the emotional memory.
Right.
If you find that this is a part of your life, I have these anxieties and I don't understand why. If we just think about that principle of, that emotional memories predate visual memories, as well as there are times where we develop emotional memories and it's just not associated with anything memorable, One thing to do that can actually be very fun, is pay attention to some themes in your family. So for instance, there's a number of principles, again, we'll talk about it on future broadcasts, but the way a family develops, that nuclear family, there are a number of principles and themes that are just very good to watch. And one is what we call a family identity, meaning that a family has a personality that's very separate from the individual personalities of the people, and that has to do with family unity and cohesiveness. And again, we can talk about that later, but the better I can define that identity, the more I can understand some of these strange emotions that come through me. Same thing with their principles of what we call unwritten family rules. Principles our family operates on that never occurred to anybody to talk about. We never discussed them, but we live by them. And so then the issues of what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad may not be something that I can put into words. I just know it. Right. And a lot of times those come out when you're first married.
Right. I was going to say, when you're in a relationship with, I'm literally thinking about that right now. Like, oof, yep.
This is what happens. Yeah. Because what I find is in my marital therapy, in the first couple of years of marriage, the triggers, that initiate conflict, the vast majority of them revolve around this very principle.
These unwritten rules that
unwritten
you were
rules,
raised
unspoken
with.
things,
This
because
right,
they're different than what you were raised with.
Right, yeah.
And they come to clash. but we take them in as assumptions as to how the world works. And so those assumptions become the of course in my life. Nobody does that. Everybody does that. You must be crazy because the world doesn't operate that
I'm ready
way.
to take this podcast in a whole different direction because I want to go down this rabbit hole. I want to go down this rabbit hole
It's a very
so
deep
bad.
hole. Yeah, right. But we will. We will do that.
Okay.
But so my suggestion for folks, if they're curious about that, is when you get together for a family gathering, let's say Christmas, 4th of July, whatever,
Right.
Take a step back and just watch how the family operates.
Okay.
You know, because it's not good or bad or right or wrong. We're not
Right.
talking about, you know,
Right.
abuse or anything like that. But there are themes and patterns that if you can stay a little outside of the family, you can observe them. So for instance, one of the principles is every family has family stories, you know,
Right.
and they're interesting because when the family gathers, they tell these stories, and typically they end in laughter. The family laughs. Oh, remember the time, you know, Dad did this or little Joey did this, etc. Now, the laughter is interesting because this story has been told hundreds of times.
Right.
And it may very well be that it's not particularly funny, but everybody laughs. And so me as an outsider, I laugh because the family's laughing. I don't laugh because it's a comedy.
You'd laugh because it would be awkward if you didn't.
Yes, right. Yeah. And I'm identifying with this family that's enjoying that kind of thing. But what's happening is what we are doing in those stories, we're expressing this family identity, this cohesiveness that we have that we enjoy so much. We are the family who does this. We're the family whose father did this, etc. Now, in those stories, watch for themes. Watch for patterns. Are they about escape? You know, are they about success? Are they about futility and frustration? You know, there are patterns and themes that talk about, they describe our family identity that it never occurs to us to give a name to or give a label to.
Yeah.
But that family identity has impacted my emotional memories. And I will have triggers in me that come from those kind of patterns. And so, you know, when goes to therapy when he's 25 or 45 or whatever, it may very well be that he will have these feelings that he doesn't understand that have to do with stability and transitions and permanence of relationships, those kind of things that come from a situation that wasn't abusive, it wasn't bad, he was a very beloved little boy,
Right.
but there's this theme in his very early life that you know, don't put your weight on a relationship because it goes away, very possibly.
Right.
That may generate a sense of anxiety that he has no context for in his adult life.
Which is, I feel like that happens to a lot of adopted kids, right?
Yes,
because of that
absolutely.
displacement when
Yes.
they before any of their cognitive memories or
Right.
any of their visual memories.
Right.
And that's
Right.
very, very normal for adopted
Right.
kids, right?
Absolutely. The thing with adopted kids is typically, at least these days, they know they're adopted.
Right.
It was told. So even if they're adopted as an infant, they have no memory. They were told.
But they're
you know.
so they're kind of prepared for that.
Exactly.
And parents are prepared for it too, right?
Exactly.
Now.
Right.
But
and they have a context.
Right.
So they say, oh, that's because I was adopted. Oh, that's because I don't know who my biological parents are, etc. Right. And often for adopted kids, they reach, you know, adulthood, and there is this longing to find mom, you know, which it makes lots of sense, but it has to do with kind of confirming or finding some stability in this emotional sense of the world's not a stable place. If I knew my mom, you know, if I just found my dad, etc. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But it's this principle we're talking about, that it is in all of us. It may be more observable in some, we may be more aware of it. But anyway, in terms of unearthing it, if people are curious, to begin looking at that family and how it interacts and what does it say. Not to be critical, you know, but just to discovery. It's like an adventure.
Right. That's interesting. That's interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like obviously this is something that affects all of us, because we were all were 1 to 3.
Yeah, right.
We all have this kind of like emotional memory bank that isn't connected to our visual memories that we can pull out of our little files, right? And just like be like, oh yeah, I remember this. Right. So we all have this like emotional memory bank that's going to resurface at some point or another if it hasn't already, right? Because we live with it, probably. Right. I know mine. I live with that. I'm very aware.
I'm full of them. Yeah, right.
Of my emotional memory bank that is torturous. but like we're all affected by it, right? Like
Right.
whether we know it or not, and now hopefully you know it.
Yes.
You're affected by it, whether you know it or not. But having that context is so interesting, and then also being like, you know, again, it doesn't necessarily mean there's closure or you need to fix it,
Right.
but just taking kind of a more passive approach, not necessarily like, oh, I have these anxieties that surface around these situations. I need to go to therapy.
Right.
Great, go to therapy. Everybody should go to therapy.
Right.
But also having this passive option of like, just start, like when you recognize it, and just start observing.
Right.
Like, just start observing. Like, you'll probably end up going to therapy because you'll be so curious about it. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I get it. I need to talk to somebody.
Right.
But in the meantime,
Right.
like, having that, like, more just, like, awareness of your surroundings and your families and your family of origin, right? And just kind of starting to, like, put a few puzzle pieces together of, like, oh my gosh, this is why I identify this way. This is why I feel this way about this. This is why, just, like, educating yourself on yourself.
Right.
That's so interesting.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It is. Well, there's a lot more here.
Yeah.
We'll do more of this.
Oh my gosh.
There's lots of stuff.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I have
very
a rabbit
fun.
hole I want to go down. Oh, it's
Okay.
going to be so good.
Take notes. We'll do it again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. No, this has been great. And so hopefully it's helpful for our audience, at least to maybe put some puzzle pieces together and realize, yeah, this doesn't mean I'm crazy.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's huge for me too, because I feel like that's something I've felt in my life so many times with anxiety, right?
Yeah,
It's like it
right.
feels displaced. It feels like,
Right.
especially in like social anxiety, like social situations, why do I feel, I love people.
Yeah.
Why do I feel this overwhelming social anxiety to the point of like, I need to
Right.
barf and leave, you know, like,
Right.
why do I feel this way? Like,
Right.
just so displaced.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
that's
Just
great.
recognizing it's not because I'm crazy.
Right.
It's because something is in me.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You know, like da da da.
And it may create a real fun adventure to chase it down.
Figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
Very
cool.
good.
Okay.
Great.
Well,
Good.
thank you guys. I hope that was helpful.
It was fun for us.
Yeah,
We had a ball.
That was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That was good. We'll see
Yeah.
you guys next time.
See you next time. Thanks.